Are you surprised by the suspension here of the CEO of Cambridge Analytica, just in light of the revelations, the accusations that have been thrown around?
Yeah, it just feels like this thing is really starting to gain more momentum here, and it feels like it's more like the beginning of the process than the end of the process. So, I suspect it's eventually going to come back to Facebook and the leadership, maybe Mark Zuckerberg himself, coming to Washington, speaking with government officials and probably leaders from other technology companies, because I think now the interest level coming out of Washington, just today, as a matter of fact, is really spiked up, and it's really suggests that the tech industry is a little bit of this feels a lot different than it has in the past about data integrity, quality. So I think this is probably just the beginning of a long process.
Yes. I was just looking at Facebook shares, and they didn't seem to react to this latest headline, which is tangential to Facebook itself, as you said. We'll see how this plays out for the company. But in terms of investors' willingness to buy Facebook's argument and listen to its side of the story, why did investors become less patient this time around? I mean, you said it feels different this time, but this is not the first time Facebook has been swirling in controversy with regard to data, with regard to privacy, or their news filtering.
Yeah, I think a couple of things are new here. First of all, I think investors, even the most bullish tech investors who have been riding these tech stocks for the last 4 or 5 years, have always felt that in the back of their minds, maybe one of the big risks out there that's so hard to quantify is regulatory risk, and that whether it was going to come out of the European Union, that's one thing. But when the U.S. government starts rumbling about regulatory concerns, oversight, those types of issues, that is fundamentally new to the investment equation for a lot of these large tech companies, particularly the social media companies, which traffic in users' content and users' information. So that feels different here this time, and I think that's what we're seeing in the marketplace. A big sell-off yesterday. We did not get any kind of support or bounce today. In fact, Facebook continues to sell off again today on big volume. So I think this feels fundamentally different to even the most, bullish and supportive Facebook and technology shareholders.
And one of the big questions here, and we keep coming back to this, and I was certainly talking to you about this yesterday as well, this idea of to what extent are the accusations that are now being thrown around to do with legacy issues and things that have already changed within Facebook to protect data and the sharing of data beyond a user initially giving up some of their information in particular. And it's still not clear to what extent that can be separated from the bigger questions that we're asking about broader data protection and privacy rights.
Yeah, I think Facebook, having heard, seen this company, over the years, they take data, the integrity of their data very, very seriously, primarily because it's a business case.
Yes.
There's also the ethical case, but there's also the business case. And the business case is simply, in order for consumers to spend more and more time on your platform and to grow your user base and to grow your engagement of your users have to feel comfortable. They have to feel comfortable about sharing their data and sharing, all the content. That is what drives the growth of their audience, the engagement of their audience, and that is what Facebook and others sell to advertisers. So if you really step back and you step back away from the 20 to 25% revenue growth that this company gives you every single quarter, where it really stems from is their growing audience and the growing engagement of their audience, which advertisers really crave.
Yes.
Paul, you were at Credit Suisse when Microsoft and the United States government were tussling over antitrust issues. And of course, that was something investors had to adjust to. If this goes in that direction, what do we need to think about when it comes to Facebook and perhaps antitrust, or at least reducing some of its influence? How do investors prepare for that moment?
Yeah, it's an evolutionary moment, I think, and it was, the European regulators in particular have always looked at U.S. technology companies with a very wary eye. And that's because there is no, per se, a big technology industry in Europe. And so when they see these big tech companies come into Europe, they rightfully, look at them with a jaundiced eye. And we've seen that time after time after time. It's happened with Microsoft. It's happened with Google. It's now happening with Facebook and others, and Netflix and Amazon's. That's one thing. Europe is one thing. And it seems like Silicon Valley and technology companies and their investors have figured out how to kind of deal with that. What's different here is it looks like it might be the U.S. government wanting to take a look at some of these businesses and really take a look, in this particular case, the data issues with these companies. That is different. That is what I think is really spooking some investors here, at least in the short term.
For Facebook and for Alphabet here, They are the monsters of advertising spend. They take by far the largest chunk of advertising spend. As an advertiser here, what makes you go, you know what, I'm going to give it to the other one, or I'm going to give it to someone significantly smaller? Is it ultimately seeing an overall decline in users? Does it take for us individual users, Facebook users,
to drop out of Facebook,
to drop it and say, you know what, I'm no longer going to use it, for an advertiser to go, fine, I'm going to give that money to someone else? Because these guys are the kings in this industry.
And if you listen to some of the big ad executives, Sir Martin Sorrell at WPP Group, or just some of the big advertising consumer products companies like Coca-Cola and Procter & Gamble, they are really hoping for a more diverse digital advertising environment. Right now, it's a duopoly between Facebook and Alphabet. That is not a good, long-term, healthy structure for this industry yet. And so maybe Amazon can become a player, maybe Snap can become a player, who knows? But right now, advertisers, if they want to put their money in digital advertising, there's only two places to go. And even when we had advertisers pulling back short-term because their ads were in front of or near objectionable content, they came right back. And it wasn't even a blip. So I think, the real issue for Facebook is they have to ensure that their user base, that their users feel comfortable with sharing the data, and that they maintain their users, the growth of their users, the engagement of their users, because that's ultimately what drives the economic model for Facebook. And they need to protect that. And the way they need to do it is, I've been saying it, they need to get out in front of this and really take ownership of this issue, which they have not done to date. We have not heard from Mark Zuckerberg or Sheryl Sandberg, and arguably from a crisis, if you listen to some of the crisis managers, experts out there, they say that may be a mistake.